In the past, I've raised with you concerns about corruption and sexual exploitation at the World Health Organization. You've said at other points that you had raised that issue with WHO leadership, but you couldn't point to any specific steps. It's been, I think, a couple years since we last had that exchange. Obviously, WHO is operating in Pakistan and many other places. There have been further scandals that have come out since around corruption in Syria, further revelations around sexual abuse in DRC and other places. What further steps have you taken to hold the WHO accountable for corruption and sexual exploitation? And what is the point at which this goes beyond simply raising verbal concerns?
So, Mr. Chair, not only about raising concerns with the WHO, but any organizations, we stay steadfast. I mean, as you know, our Feminist International Assistance Policy is focused on women, everything from sexual reproductive health all the way to making sure that there's women entrepreneurship. In fact, actually, in terms of it,
Minister, I am going to jump in there. I want you to just maybe address very specifically the issues of the WHO. What are you going to do to hold the WHO accountable?
I am trying to answer the overall question, especially about Pakistan, because I think it's important that since we're talking about Pakistan, I want to share an example for you of how important that work is. So, for example, the polio teams that go out, and this is probably one of the most important things that I learned there. They're made up of women going into some rural areas, including dealing with
what are you going to do to hold the WHO accountable?
No, okay, you got to hear me out in terms of how we're making a change in many different ways.
That wasn't my question.
I've already answered your question regarding the WHO and what we're doing in many other organizations, but you also want to hear what the work that we're doing in Pakistan at the grassroots level for supporting women.
But, Minister, the WHO is an organization that receives money from Canada, and the scandal was multiple cases of sexual exploitation, of threats towards women involving WHO employees. And specifically, what are you going to do to hold that organization accountable? We keep hearing revelations out of this, and it's great to say we're doing some good work over here, but what are the steps you're taking to hold the WHO accountable?
Work over here. When it comes to supporting women, we're actually seeing tangible results. And the examples that I was trying to give about Pakistan, since this committee is
WHO,
studying about that.
That's the question.
Right? But that's the point. I've already answered your question regarding WHO in terms of all our funding that we provide.
So the answer is you've raised the issue verbally.
We hold them to account, and if there's, we'll take other steps when it comes to this.
What steps will you take? When it comes to
the exact examples, listen, if you do care about supporting women, I'm trying to give you examples of a clear example from Pakistan.
No, I want you to tell me what steps you have taken and are prepared to take to hold the WHO accountable for this increasing pattern of corruption and abuse. It's a very simple question.
I made it very clear. On my first meeting, I raised the issues, asked my team in terms of exactly what is taking place, looked at those results, and our teams on the ground.
But the funding continues. There's no additional conditions to funding. There's no additional requirements around funding to say that we are not going to fund programs unless we see a higher standard. Have you imposed additional conditions on funding?
We have a high standard when it comes to all the organizations, including WHO.
What additional conditions have you imposed on WHO funding?
When it comes,
I suspect none.